Hi, I'm Bree Pickering. I'm the director at the Murray Art Museum Albury, and I am here with artist Viche-Boul Ra, who is showing as part of No Easy Answers, our current exhibition. And we are here on Wiradjuri country, and I acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Hi Ra.
Hey.
It's so great to have you here. Maybe we'll start with this, like my experience of this work, even though we haven't seen its full articulation yet, is that there's no kind of location in space or time. There's sort of this like amazing expansiveness.
Yeah.
But I think that's just so present. Just it's immediately available to you, I think, in the work. So yeah, maybe do you want to talk about that? Why that's important to you, or that what does expansiveness and what does that mean to you, or why is it important material of your work, I suppose?
Yeah, expansiveness. I guess there's something. I guess I'll backtrack a little bit and think about it through the lens of maybe fantasy, particularly maybe for this work, but the ability to, I'm going to say go anywhere, but also be anywhere and anything. It's really alluring and like necessary, perhaps for survival, I think. There's the threat of perhaps like escapism that I toy with a lot. I think escapism might be a little dangerous, but when we talk about like the expanse and like leaving the now or leaving the then and coming up with new questions, I think that's where escapism comes in. But I do think it's like a useful provocation of being like, I can be and am anywhere and anything. And of course, it starts with me as like a creature, individual creature. Yeah, it starts there, and then it obviously comes out in the work. And I think that's why I'm drawn to like installation versus just pure sculpture, performance versus sculpture.
That's really, I love how you're saying that, like that you can be anywhere and be anything, but then also your body itself becomes a really important material in your work.
Yeah.
But there's no contradiction there. That's what's so expansive about it in some ways,
Yeah.
I think. So maybe, yeah, as a dancer, or how you inhabit that space as a dancer as part of your, or dance as part of your art practice, I suppose.
I think that, so body as vessel feels kind of initially important when I was thinking about not codifying my practice, but really like wrangling it. I think body as vessel felt really hot and tangible. So when I'm thinking about my body as a container, of course the container can hold things, but oh my god, we can do a TARDIS reference, right? Like Doctor Who, you know, like it holds a thing.
Yeah.
But it holds an endless thing, you know?
Yes,
so
yes.
that same way, it's not, like you're saying, it's not a contradiction. It's just a faint pencil, a faint like circle in pencil around, like made on a blank page. But it can be erased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So maybe we could talk a little bit about the aesthetics of the work. I mean, you were talking earlier about the installation component is all like off-the-shelf, purchasable stuff.
Yeah.
Why is that important to you as an installation? A mode of installing or creating a sculpture, I suppose.
I guess I can think about it through the lens of practicality for this show. Obviously, I don't live here. And of course, I think making the work, constructing something at home in Philadelphia and then trying to ship it was a logistic question I'm not sure I'm prepared for or not interested in, I would say. It was too much of a hassle. So there are the logistics of it. But then in the previous iteration of Crib, the same things were done. Like everything was still purchased through a company.
Nice.
That will not be named. And it definitely, as I was saying, it gives the viewer a glimpse into how I'm perhaps imagining agency. Taking these everyday materials or things that we could say everyone has access to and sort of witching them into an alternative space-bending material. So then it's not about perhaps me as a specific hierarchical being of artist, and it's me utilizing the materials around me and for perhaps survival again, or perhaps just fun. I was talking about the grow lights. Well, the grow lights are connected to a wedding ring trellis of sorts.
Yeah, like a circular trellis.
Yeah,
or
circular
something.
trellis, yeah. And ultimately it makes a giant ring light. They do make giant ring lights. Like I could have purchased that, but there's something interesting about making that of smaller components. In the same way you might arrange your room in a specific way, like you might want flowers on the right-hand side of the windowsill. You might want there are these tiny decisions I think also play a part in the assembling of it versus just, let me just make. There's something, it is a making, it's still a making.
It's
just
definitely
very,
a making, yeah.
It's different. It's like, maybe like a Frankensteining of a thing versus like having a baby. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. But that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's what artists do. They take the materials around them and use them in unexpected ways, or use them the way they need to use them.
Yeah. And there's a stickiness inside of the work of it being purchased material, brand new, wasteful material. Like there's that side of it. There's the sheen of where it's coming from, perhaps maybe like. Yeah, so the things are accessible, but that's also an issue.
Yes.
From like the consumerism point of view.
The stickiness, I like that that word you used. Ella used messiness or like looseness as well as being something that actually occurs across the works in this show in completely different forms.
Yeah.
But it is that stickiness, I think, that is also part of the work, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, you're going into places like nobody can live a completely unconflicted life.
Right, exactly.
So you can't make unconflicted work. You can
Yeah.
only embrace that tension and see what happens at that point, right?
Yeah. I'm running into that a lot when I'm making some of the sound work and the sound scores. I've been working a lot from the lens of perhaps like hip hop or rap, which, thinking about fantasy and construction of self, it's a ripe space to parse through those ideas, particularly in Blackness. But there's so much violence inside of those forms, which are hard to extract from the sound itself, I think. I have many questions about that, and I might leave that there because it's something I still have to work out. But the way even the video operates, there's this like almost weird violent figure that's like looming over everything that I find beautiful and I'll be gazing into it for the performance. But there's something underneath the surface. There's something definitely lurking, and perhaps these things that we can't maybe run away from, or the conflict that we can't necessarily avoid. And so how then do we? I'll say it again, witch them into something else. Yeah.
I was, thinking about your work in the context of Australia as well, and American culture is so pervasive here and in many places in the world. But I think a lot of Australians would think that they understand American culture, and that they understand Black popular culture as well.
Right.
But I think there's a flattening of it that happens through the commercialization of culture and the kind of mass dissemination, and then how it reaches people as well filters through their cultural context. But that flattening stops us from being able to see those sticky points that you're talking about. So in a nuanced way, it's just this flat thing that you see and you think you understand. So I was really thinking about how your work here could start to kind of scratch the surface and open that up for people a little bit to see, like, you think you know. But what you know is just framed through, the companies that shall not be named.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that there's nuance in everything, I guess, is sort of what.
Yeah.
I'm getting at
It's
there.
so interesting because I even walking around, there's this beautiful and this happens in America too, but the way that even my presentation or body itself brings so many questions, that same stickiness that people can, the performativity of the everyday, the same, I guess what I'm saying is like, the way I move through the world literally, hopefully asks people to ask questions about that flattening. Like I like to think that someone looks at me and they don't really know what they're looking, like literally, like what someone once asked me, they were like, what are you? But like they meant it as in like, what are you? Like what kind of creature are you? And that was just so enticing.
Yeah.
And like I felt at that point I was like, it's working, you know?
Yeah.
And in the same way I hope the work does that.
I think it will.
Okay, yeah.
Back to that, the aesthetic of the work, there's something for me that, having lived briefly in Philadelphia, I just really glossed over the surface, but there is something that sort of says Philadelphia in the aesthetic. It's still got that nowhere, everywhere vibe to it, but there's something also a little bit Philadelphia about it. Like, does the city, do you have any of that sense, or is it just kind of part of your being?
It probably is just part of my being. I mean, I could say like the thing that maybe I could say the flattening thing, right? Like, oh, they're the thing, like from a city, like I grew up in a city, and so like the way it's put together, like it's drawn from multiple sources. Like I can say that, but I'm never thinking of that, and I have questions about even how true that is. Mainly because I think I'm like in the internet more than I am in the city, like in my brain.
Yeah.
But the internet is a city. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a nice kind of divergence, because that is another thing that I was thinking about. One thing is like just the basic thing of the white picket fence you cannot purchase in Australia, right? There's these like slight differences in the things that you can get that will then create a kind of language that connects to something else. Yeah. You're a prolific artist. We've sort of talked about this before, but I've been watching your practice really for the past 7 years or so, and I've seen a lot, which is amazing. Though it's such an incredible way to see art. So you exist in online spaces. Your work exists in online spaces in this really amazing kind of iterative way. And it's probably in many spaces that I would never see, because I'm kind of not I'm not really that much on the internet.
Yeah.
But just that is an art viewing space.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like NFT kind of art viewing, but like it is an actual real space, right?
Yeah. I was just having a conversation with my friend, I'll shout out, Short Popsule Fall, who is in Philadelphia, and we were just talking about, or I mentioned YouTube, because that's my primary, like, if I make a video work or if I make work in general, it's probably going to end up on YouTube. But YouTube as sort of like its own kind of expanse, or its own kind of like city, I was really excited about, more so than like another platform like Vimeo or something, about like the democracy of probably early YouTube. I would say it's of course changing, but in terms of the way that the internet allows weaving, I guess, or I don't know, there's something beautiful about how like my work can sit next to like a Coachella performance, or sit next to like let's just say like Beyonce or something. But there are questions that can be raised by the democracy inside of digital landscape, and so I think that's why I like return to it as opposed to just being a live performer, I think.
Ella, when I was talking to Ella, whose work is like sort of literally visualizing the hidden systems of the internet, and she was saying that some of the first models of the internet were like based on like lacework and weaving, which was really quite fascinating, with just the way that you raised that term of the weaving together.
Yeah, I like that as like because you have the very structured system of the internet, right? But then you have the messiness of new possibilities, the lightning, the pop-ups that come up, the things that distract you. You have all these other daily interactions that seep their way into the internet. You have habits that form. So I'm thinking, because lacework, all of those, the idea that it's this super structured thing is enticing, but also it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even like materially, like the work in the show, like I realized everything is so hard. Like it's all purchased. Most of it's like plastic, or it's like metal.
Mm.
But just thinking about that, that's so interesting.
So you showed me a video of you just testing out the performance space,
Mm-hmm.
And I love how I've seen you do this quite a bit, where you create in the real world, like the video of the space in between the real and the internet or something. I don't know, does that make sense? You know, like when you use the flash of the lights to kind of expand the way the light works on you. And it's still you where you are in the real world, but I can see it's almost like a portal into the other space, or maybe, that might be too loose a concept, but they're just tricks of light in lots of ways, but it seems like more than a trick of light. You're opening a door or something. I don't know.
And I have to come up with a better term, but it is witchcraft, right? And perhaps not unintentionally, but perhaps ever present. I love the idea, and it's something everyone does. Everyone's collaborating with their technology, right? Like, we live with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that maybe my phone will just do that automatically. I didn't record that video. Like, someone else took that video that I showed you.
It's totally
I gave them my phone and they did it. So it's perhaps the hope that the tech is alive enough and has lived with me enough to understand what we're doing together. To know that I don't want my camera to get the sharpness of the moment. It's a collaboration with technology in a way that, it's a collaboration with technology constantly.
Yeah.
And we're all doing it. We're all
I know, and it needs to be embraced.
Yeah.
Right. Or really thought through.
Yeah.
And I think, Ella as an artist, she's sort of 15 years ahead of you, or older than you, how do you say that? And there's similarities, and yet you can kind of see the duration between, in some ways, not in a kind of old and new framework, but more in a what it's been like to grow with the internet and to be, this is kind of diverging away from your practice, but I think it is. Because it's such an important space that you work with, and this collaboration with technology, I think is really important. And in, the context, there are other works in the show that are very much kind of they seem to be very much grounded in object-based practice.
Yeah.
Still, many of the ideas are coming through a filter of that collective knowledge and flattening of space and time that is occurring for all of us.
Yeah.
But what are the strategies to survive it, or how does it become a mechanism for survival as well, which I think is sort of what you were saying before.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's something, the expanse, I don't know. Yeah. Which it can't be that. That's definitely very Star Trek or something.
But I love this too, because there is this fantasy, sci-fi, that the aesthetic of, it feels both old and new all the time. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think I should mention World of Warcraft. I think it was pretty, I don't know, I played it as a teenager. But I think that in that game it's very specific in the way that, or maybe not in that game, but I think the way I approached that game as understanding it as something thinking about old world fantasy, of thinking about elves and all these kinds of things maybe you can find in Lord of the Rings, that people know that more readily, but also understanding it as a technology, as perhaps another version of me, or perhaps something that I can approach as another version of me. Again, that danger of escapism, right? But understanding that, right? So there's there's the idea of, here's this old fantasy thing, but also here's this avatar, I guess it's what people would say, this avatar that I can use to ask questions about how I'm existing in contemporary life. I mean, people can't see me right now, but I look like a Blood Elf Warlock right now. Like I do. Like if I open the game, you'd be like, oh, that's actually, that hairstyle is literally from the game. But this is also a very black hairstyle. Like, you know, like it's wavy, it's messy, it's expansive and exciting. And that's all I'm interested in. I don't want to make work that doesn't excite me.
I think that is amazing. We can stop there. Thanks, Ra.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. This was fun.